Today we are talking about what I would do and how I would level if I had to start a new character today. Over the course of the last 3 years, I have leveled 3 characters, and each time I did that, I followed a different path. And if I had to level a 4th character now after the Aeternum release, I would also do that differently. So I wanted to bring a guide on my recommendation on the most effective way to level. Before we start, I will say this is my recommendation. If you have a better recommendation, leave it down below in the comments. I would love to see it and possibly help out people who might catch the video. And secondly, I am going to be recommending that you do some PvP in this guide. Do not feel like that's a must. I am just giving my recommendation on what I think would be the best way, but I also enjoy PvP and I'm okay doing it. If you do not enjoy it and do not want to do it, I will try to offer a secondary piece of advice that you can follow. And with that out of the way, let's jump right in. When you start fresh in the game, my key advice is not going to sound much different than what you've probably heard from other people, and that is to follow the main story quest line. Up until level 17, I recommend that you strictly follow the main story quest and do not deviate from it very much. The reason why is because it is the absolute best way to receive experience in your lower levels. Now, once you reach level 17, you will gain access to the faction missions and the ability to join a faction once you complete their quest line. I recommend you stop what you're doing as soon as you hit 17 and immediately join a faction. It doesn't matter which one, but run through their quest line and immediately join the faction. You might be thinking that I'm giving this recommendation so that you get access to the faction vendor and the faction quest line, but that's not it at all. We'll get into why you want to join the faction immediately in the next part. For now, finish the faction quest line, join the faction, and then continue about your day normally doing main story quests, or if you want, do some faction missions until you hit level 20. At level 20, you'll want to stop doing whatever you are doing and go get your mount in the north part of Everfall. Finish the short quest line to receive your mount, and I would recommend that you immediately complete the first set of races that you receive, as well as buying a good handful of vitals and giving 3 of those vitals to your horse every single day. Increasing your riding level is so important in being able to traverse the map faster. If you don't feel like doing the races, just at least give your horse 3 vitals a day. I will say doing at least a couple of them is a good idea so that you can increase your overall speed at least a few times. And then don't worry, you don't have to do them again. Once you have your mount, continue progression as normal until level 25. At level 25, you gain access to the first expedition, Amarine Excavation. And at this point, I recommend you come into the Activities tab, go into the Expeditions tab, and do 3 random daily expeditions. At first, you'll only have access to 1, but as you continue to level up, you will gain access to more of the expeditions along the way. This is good for multiple different reasons. The first is that it gives you a good amount of experience, and the second is that it lets you be able to complete each of the expeditions once as you're progressing through. You're more likely to hit 65 and have done all of the expeditions, so that you can immediately move into doing mutated expeditions, because completing the expedition on normal difficulty is required before you're able to do the mutated difficulty. But we'll get into that section later. For now, come in and do 3 random daily expeditions, take the gold that is received, and pocket it. If you are able to run tank or healer, I definitely recommend that, not only because of the additional boost that you receive in gold, but also, there's not enough tanks and healers, especially healers, in the game right now, and it would be wonderful to see people picking up that role. You will continue to progress through up to 65, running 3 expeditions daily and doing the main story quest line throughout the day. The last piece of advice that I'll give you, which can be ignored if you are just completely opposed to PvP, would be to participate in the nightly races. As soon as you hit 17 and you are able to join a faction, you can choose to join a company, but even that's not required. And every night your faction will participate in a couple different races across Aeternum. And I would recommend you stop what you're doing in the evening and participate in these races. If the race is not very populated, or there's not a lot of people participating in the race, then stop doing the race and go back to doing your main story quest line or your expeditions. But if there's a good amount of people participating in the race, join a raid group and participate in the race. Not only is it a good way to level your weapons and level up as well, but you also are able to receive experience for your faction, and you're able to rank up in your faction. This is very important because one of the pieces of advice that I have as soon as you hit 65 is to purchase a set of gear from your faction vendor. And if you are not at the max rank by the time you hit 65, you will not be able to do this. So I do recommend you participate in races, and at the very least, at least throw in 3 faction missions a day. If you do not enjoy PvP, then do the PvE missions so that you can slowly rank up over time as you level. And hopefully by the time you hit 65, you should be around the max rank in your factions, or at least close enough that you can quickly grab it. Having said that, level as normal, doing nightly races, expeditions 3 times a day, and the main story quest line. Once you hit 65, we'll enter into the next section. Before I jump into the in-game section, I would like to say if you have found value so far and enjoying the video, I would greatly appreciate a like. And hey, if you disagree with what I've said so far, add it down in the comments below. And if you agree with what I've said or you're finding it useful, also add that down in the comments below. On your way back up, hit that subscribe button. Let's keep going. There are many different websites that you can use to get the following information, but I personally prefer New World Database, and you can use this database to find different artifacts that you think would work towards your build. When it comes to armor, I would recommend for almost anybody to farm for featherweight. This is a wonderful piece of armor that doesn't count against your load and can help you be able to equip heavier armor with better armor rating while still being able to be on a medium or even light load. You're able to farm this in the Elysian Wilds, I believe right from this point here. And it is a bird, and I believe his name is Niramura. Correct me if I'm wrong. Once you figure out the armor artifact, your weapon artifact, and your jewelry artifact that you would like to wear, you'll want to obtain those as quickly as possible. Try to choose ones that are not locked behind expeditions so that you can quickly farm for them and obtain them without needing to wait for a mutated expedition rotation. After that, come up to your faction vendor, access the rewards section, and if you scroll down to the bottom, you will notice a couple different sets of armor. One of them will be a heavy set, one will be a light, and one will be a medium set. I recommend you buy 4 of these pieces to equal out your build so that you have 1 artifact and 4 pieces of armor. These faction pieces of armor come with Enchanted Ward, Refreshing, and Health, which are phenomenal perks for almost any build, and is a great starting place for any person who's looking to first step into the in-game of New World. You can slowly learn about all the other perks and what you may enjoy afterwards, but at least for now, you can get into 4 675 gear score items, as well as another 700 gear score artifact, already raising your gear score to close to maximum right off the bat. It will cost you about 20,000 gold, and I believe somewhere around 70,000 faction tokens to buy 4 pieces of gear, which is why it'll be very important for you to hoard your expedition money as well as your faction tokens up to this point. Do note that all of these pieces come with Constitution as their attribute, and if you come back up to the first rank, you'll be able to buy these seals, and you can take these seals over to either the forge or the outfitting station to be able to change those attributes to ones that you want instead of Constitution. Do that and you'll put yourself in a position with 5 pieces of armor that are pretty good for almost any build. The next thing I would recommend you do is come down to Cutlass Keys. Once you're in Cutlass Keys, there will be a variety of different people inside the city that have missions that you can complete to receive doubloons. But if you'll pay attention to your recruitment chat, you'll also see people typing XCK into the chat. And if you're able to see this, you can join into a Cutlass Keys Elite chest run. For my server, they start out of the Admiral Shrine down here. but it might start in a different location for you. If you're new, just type into chat that you would like to do a Cutlass Keys run and find out what shrine they start at, and join in on this Cutlass Keys run. You should end the run with about 700 doubloons. And quite honestly, I think that is way better than doing the repeatable quests here in Cutlass Keys. But at the end of it, you will come over here to the Well of Fortune, and every week you are able to buy a glittering golden key. So I recommend you buy that as well. And then once you have the key, I recommend to fast travel to the Sanctuary Shrine. And then where you're trying to go from here is to these different pylons that separate the normal area from the open world free-for-all PvP area. Once you are down in this area, you will come to these pylons and you will find this chest for a locked doubloon cache. Go ahead and open this box and you will get 500 mystic doubloons. That, along with the around 700 doubloons that you should get from a elite chest run, should put you around 1200 doubloons. And at that point, we'll come back to the Well of Fortune. And the first thing I would recommend you do is go ahead and use 750 of those doubloons to be able to buy a weapon. Now, if you have an artifact weapon in mind already, buy the other weapon that you plan on using. So if the artifact, for this instance, I am using the Butcher as my primary weapon, and maybe I want to run a Warhammer as my secondary. So I would buy the Smashburg for 750 doubloons. And now I have a 710 secondary, as well as my artifact at 700 for my primary weapon. If you don't know what artifact you plan on using, or you can't find one that you like that you can't go out and immediately farm, then I recommend doing the CK run 2 days in a row to be able to get 1400 between the 2 days, as well as your glittering golden key, bringing you up to 1900, and then you can immediately buy the 2 weapons that you want. While you're in the well, I do recommend that you come down to the epic crate and go ahead and buy 3 of those each day, as well as the 5 rare crates. These have a chance of dropping some better gear, and that can always be a good idea to pick those up and help out. At this point, you should have an artifact weapon, as well as a Well of Fortune secondary weapon, or worst case scenario, 2 Well of Fortune weapons at 710, as well as 5 pieces of gear, 4 of them being faction pieces of gear and 1 being an artifact. The final piece of the puzzle is for you to pick up 3 pieces of jewelry. If you are able to farm for an artifact piece of jewelry, I would recommend doing that. But worst case scenario, the next best thing that you could do is to come to the trading post and go ahead and purchase as high of a gear score item as possible for each of those 3 slots. Be sure to filter down for the specific attributes that you would like, as well as any possible perks. Refreshing, as well as refreshing toast, are pretty good for your jewelry, in my opinion. But go ahead and pick up an amulet, earring, and ring that are within your budget that at least have somewhat close to the stats that you would like. Now at this point, you will have 2 weapons, 5 pieces of armor, and 3 pieces of jewelry that are legendary and in 675 gear score and above, and you're in a wonderful position to enter into the end game. You should have relatively good perks with refreshing, enchanted ward, and health. And at this point, you can begin doing mutated expeditions. 2 of them a day will give you a good chunk of gold, as well as throwing in a couple elite chest runs to give you more legendary drops so you can modify your build further. And I would still recommend participating in nightly races to be able to do some PvP, join a company, and eventually, if you feel up to it, you can try the raid, or even participating in wars. And guys, that is the advice that I would give you if I had to start over a fresh character today and progress from level 0 up. I think that is a really good place to start. It introduces you to all of the various different concepts of the game and puts you in a great position at the end to be able to put yourself into a really good set of gear and be fully equipped to go out and do a variety of different pieces of in-game content. As always, if you disagree, I welcome it, and add your comments down below. Let's open up a conversation. And as always, I would appreciate if you did all the normal YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, and I can't wait to see you guys in Aeternum.